Hello, and welcome back to Through the Glass Columns, your weekly read along Wheel of Time podcast. And I am here to say something exciting, which is for the last time, we will be talking to you about book 4 of the Wheel of Time, The Shadow Rising.
I just want to be clear. I'm
And
going to talk about this book a lot for the rest of this podcast.
shut up. Nobody knows you're here because I haven't introduced you. So this is, if you are one of our regular listeners, you know we usually do 1 to 2, once in a while, 3 chapters a week. And this week we are not doing any assigned reading because we are here just to kind of do our wrap-up discussion on this book. And it's exciting because it has been a long journey. As we shared at the end of last episode, it's crazy to think about. This took us from, January to August in, 2024. Again, please don't speak. I haven't introduced you. People don't know who you are. So it's very exciting to be here to celebrate this. And it's an exciting time for the podcast. So continuing on this feed, now that we are in August, you will very shortly find that we also will be dropping episodes about season 2 of the Wheel of Time television show. Now, we're keeping that date just a little vague because we're hoping that Amazon starts promoting the 3rd season, and they have a little J.R.R. Tolkien-ish show called Rings of Power to get out of the way first, and something else called Carnival Road they want to promote, and then we hope that Wheel of Time might get a trailer or some such. So it's entirely possible you're hearing me say this after Comic-Con in San Diego, where they dropped some awesome trailer, and you're like, this guy's a loser. Yes, I am, but I'm just recording in the past. So you should be preparing for those episodes, and you should, of course, rush out if you haven't, buy your copy of the Fires of Heaven, book 5 of the Wheel of Time series, or get it from your local library. Although I think if you follow along with us, that would break the checkout rules on your local library, most likely. And be prepared for what we'll call season 5 of this show when we launch next week. We're not taking a break to our knowledge. We'll just launch right into the Fires of Heaven, which is exciting. All right. Well, I guess Greg, the host you all like the most and the one who knows nothing about these books, should be quiet now and introduce my co-pilot on this episode. Yes, I will eventually let him speak. It's Tyler. Tyler, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I would say that's the longest that any one of us has spoken uninterrupted on this podcast, but then I remembered that I summarize chapters literally every week. So it's good to have you do the heavy lifting for once. I am very excited for where we are at in the Wheel of Time series. I always think of the Shadow Rising as being kind of the turning point book. It's the point where we stop doing the Tolkien thing every book and start getting something new and exciting and different and really get to kind of dive into Robert Jordan's world. So I'm both really excited that we have finished this book and I can now kind of talk freely about it without fear of spoiling the end of the book. And also, I'm really excited for what's coming next because part of what makes The Shadow Rising so exciting to me is that it ends with us not really knowing what comes next for any of our characters. And for me, yay. This is my first opportunity to ask you the broad general question without feeling like I'm cheating the rules of our show. Greg, how did you like this book?
I hated it, every moment of it. This podcast is torture, and I am looking for somebody to rescue me. This is a Liam Neeson situation. Please call Liam Neeson. He needs to rescue me and get me out of here. Uh, no, boy, it's gonna be a punchy episode. I can tell already. Maybe I should sleep more. um, I had a great time with this book. I think you had billed it for a long time as one of your favorites, if not the favorite in the series. And so I certainly came in with high expectations, which, if we're keeping it 100, like the children said 10 years ago, then I think that those expectations hurt me a little bit because
Yeah.
it's big and it's expansive, but I think I wasn't expecting how different it would be from, like you said, the structure of the other books. Um, I guess if you didn't ask me for a single word, but I'll give you a single word, which should just be expansive. That I feel like this was a major step towards widening, deepening, contradicting, like just spreading out in every possible direction.
Yeah.
And we saw that with the way the characters are separated, with the fact they don't reunite, right? It feels
Yeah.
like a bigger world, and they all seem to be discovering different major pieces of it that have been in place, but we haven't known about.
So we've talked about this a little bit in the past. I tend to, or let's start with you because I'm going to end up at me. You have a tendency to use apps like, I'm thinking, what's the beer one, Untapped or whatever, or you
Yeah.
have. Right, you use apps where you rank things on a scale of 1 to 10 and then you curate those rankings. I hate 1 to 10 rankings. They hurt my soul. I never know what the difference between a 9.7 and a 9.6 is. But what I really love, because it helps me get to the same idea without having arbitrary numbers, is rankings. So you only have 4 books to rank in the Wheel of Time series. Where would you put The Shadow Rising out of 4?
Am I currently looking at them sitting on my shelf to make sure I remember the titles? Yes, I am. Do you want them in ascending or descending order?
Worst to best.
Uh, I I'm gonna put the Eye of the World at the bottom,
Yep.
always with appreciation for any number one in a series that has to do the heavy expository work. But in the long run, they never just feel as good as often the other segments because they have to do that work.
Yeah.
And the further we get into this, the more quaint Eye of the World seems, even though it seemed huge at the time that they crossed the whole continent, or not the whole, but a good chunk of the
Yeah.
continent. Now it's like, oh, it's much bigger than we thought. I'm gonna put the Dragon Reborn after that.
Yeah.
And that's not to throw shade towards it, but it also in hindsight is starting to feel smallish.
Yeah.
And that, it was all still pretty contained. I'll go next to this one, The Dragon Reborn, which I think was
Wait,
really
this one, The
exciting,
Shadow
and
Rising?
The Shadow Rising.
Yeah.
Sorry, Shadow Rising.
Oh, good.
So from the bottom, worst it's gone 1, 3, 4,
4. Yeah.
and then my best will be number 2. Spoiler alert. But I think this one had some really great sequences, and I really liked the choice to go back to Two Rivers. As I've confessed, I think the Elaine Nynaeve plot was less successful for me.
Yeah.
And I think a difference between you and I is I struggle a little bit more with the Aiel
Yeah.
stuff. That is, I don't think I yet have a good kind of grand picture of what I should be paying attention to, and why it's cool and why it's not cool. I think it all. I mean, we joked last episode. I had a note that was like so many Aiel words,
Yeah.
because it's like a lot of that world building, and that's why I'd put it second to number 2. So my
Yep.
favorite so far has been The Great Hunt, and I would say The Great Hunt had the combination of a strong plot
Yep.
throughout, and I feel has left us with the most dangling strings that I'm interested in coming back to,
Okay.
like the Shanchan, which we got a piece of this book. I want to know more about that and that history. I certainly wanted to understand a little bit better what's going on with the Aes Sedai after that book, and like the what's our show logo? What's that thing called? The
The
transport
Portal
thing,
Stones.
Portal Stones. Like that's one of those ones that are just like, oh wait, that's still out there. Like that's a part of this world, the parallel dimensions piece.
Yeah.
And so I think all of that makes me feel like there's still a lot there that I want to get back to. And the heroes at the end. I really
Yeah.
like that sequence. So but I would not say there is a wide gulf between the Great Hunt and the Shadow Rising. The
Yeah.
wider gulf is between the Shadow Rising and the Dragon Reborn. So I'd put
Yeah.
1 and 3 lower, not
Yeah.
giving numbers because I understand your principles, and then I'd put the other 2 a little higher.
Okay, cool. And that's really helpful. That both kind of frames for me what it seems like you are liking and a little bit less liking in the Wheel of Time. And I will say, I think that puts you very much in line with a lot of what I think of as like old school Wheel of Time fans, right? I think both the Shadow Rising and The Great Hunt are both among what are considered like the Great Wheel of Time books, and your order of those great books varies from person to person. I personally have a little bit more disdain for The Great Hunt than you seem to, and that everyone seems to, but I just don't like being in Rand's head for 60% of a book. That's just my big objection to the entirety of that book. My rankings for anyone who cares, I have The Eye of the World at number 15 out of 15. Boo. I have The Great Hunt at number 13 out of 15. I have The Dragon
Mm.
Reborn at number 10 out of 15. And I have The Shadow Rising at number 1. Through the Glass Columns is
Woo.
a hell of a scene, and I will take that drug as many times as you want me to. I think you described it right, right? This is a book that is really heavy on world building. It changes the way the world works, and it focuses on the Aiel. And if you don't care about the Aiel or their culture, yeah, this book is probably somewhere in your like 5, 6 ish range when you're ranking Wheel of Time books. But if you really are interested in the Aiel and you think Avienda is a fascinating puzzle box and you're really curious about how you get a history this deep and then break it and what's going to happen afterwards, this to me is the plot line that leaves all of the fascinating dangling things that I'm really excited about. And I'm sure that I am more excited about it in part because I know the Aiel so well because I've read these books a bunch of times. So what I'm hopeful for is that the Shadow Rising will rise in your estimation as you get to know the Aiel better. But if not, it seems like you liked it, and I'm really happy about that. Every time I introduce you to a book you enjoy, that is a successful season of the podcast, as far as I'm concerned.
Uh, Wait, does that mean since we read your number one book, this is over? This is it? This is the last episode of
It,
Through the Glass?
it, if oh no, that could potentially be a spoiler. If the name of our podcast became completely irrelevant, you might be right, but we'll find out.
Hmm. Hmm. It's also still I'm gonna beat this old drum. It's crazy to me that we're not yet at a third of the way through this
Yeah,
series. I mean, I don't read fantasy books as previously established, but when I do, they're trilogies. I mean, that's kind of the classic format is a
yeah,
trilogy of books, and I've never tackled one that's this long before. I think I'm much more likely. I think the Clash of King. Nope, that's not what those are called. The Dandelion King,
oh
the
yeah,
Ken Liu books. I think that's a quadrilogy. But I don't often. Well, and I as I've said on the podcast, I tackled the Jack Aubrey 21 books, but those are
mm,
all. I think those top out at like 250 for pages. So
yeah.
it's like we've already covered the majority of that series, I think, in terms of page count in this undertaking.
Yeah, I think that there's something just different about reading this many books, right? And this is to some degree the problem that I have with both The Eye of the World and The Great Hunt when we're comparing them. You talked about The Eye of the World, that kind of challenge of establishing the world building in the first book of the series. I kind of feel like the first trilogy of The Wheel of Time devotes the majority of its time to doing that world building and establishing the characters. And so it's not until we get to The Shadow Rising that I really feel like we kind of get going, right? Like to the Lord of the Rings length, we have just left Rivendell, y'all. It's time for things to get exciting.
It's spoken as if the Council of Elrond almost broke your soul at some point when reading those books.
It's a chapter. It's I don't recommend reading those books before you see the movies. You really need to
Hmm.
see the movies first. I have nothing else to say, like big overall impressions. Did you have kind of any last thoughts on this book before we play everyone's favorite game show in America, other than everything on
Well,
Dropout? You should watch all of the game shows on Dropout.
I'm going to keep it a little vague as we try to do, but it is really interesting to me that there is a lot of the television show that has not happened,
Yeah.
and there is a lot of the books that have not happened. So, meaning that I continue to be surprised how divergent those two interpretations of this content are.
Yeah.
If people are have listened to us this far but have not actually done the television show, I highly recommend it. Again, make up a fake email. Don't give Amazon money if you don't want to, and get your free trial and kind of burn through the two seasons. I think you would be surprised at the ways in which these experiences resonate with each other but differ from each other. So
Yeah.
here now, as we start to think towards season 3 of the television show, which, they are not totally unrelated from their books, but I think of the major events that have happened either here in the books or in the television show, but not in both, and that continues to surprise me.
It's a long list, absolutely. And now, is everybody ready to make Greg feel silly after having such a good observation? Let's do it.
All right.
In The Shadow Rising, there are, drum roll, 20 unique POV
Ooh.
characters. It's going to get brutal towards the end of this list. We are going to, as always, attempt to have Greg name the characters that have the most point of view as measured by the word count in this book. The goal is to get them from 1 to 20. That is most POV to least. Who do you think is the character that had the most POV by word count?
And where I'm at in my head is that I feel like it has to be one of the original 4 boys. I just don't know how to rank them. I'm gonna guess Perrin, because he never split his POV in those chapters, whereas Rand often did.
That is exactly correct. Perrin comes in at number 1 with 28.3% of the POV. It is worth noting that the Rand and others plot line, I don't want to list too many names, also actually has a larger total percent of the book, but it is broken up across multiple characters. And so you're exactly right. Perrin is the number 1 in terms of total POV. Who is our number 2?
Good. I quit there. Nope. I so nailed my answer there. I'm walking away. Have a good night through the glass columns. Okay. So, then I think this is only interesting if I talk through my
totally.
thought process. So Nynaeve is tempting, but there was such a large portion where that plot line just disappeared that I don't feel like it can quite rank up in number 2. And so that pushes me back over towards the Rand plot lines. But in the mix of those, we have Rand, Egwene, Matt, and I think some Moraine, all in that kind of things happening in the threefold land. I think I got to go Rand for number 2, though, because I still think he makes up the majority of those chapters, even if it's not as much as Perrin.
You are absolutely correct. I think it may by a very slim margin be a plurality, not a majority, but Rand does make up 21.6% of the total book. It's worth noting that Rand and Perrin total are almost exactly 50% of this book.
Wow.
Who's our number 3?
I'm stuck in my head between Egwene and Nynaeve. I think in my memory, I would say Nynaeve has more than Egwene, is my guess. So I'm going to say Nynaeve.
You are correct on the plot line, but wrong on the character. Nynaeve actually does not get most of the POV in her plot line in this book. Elaine comes in at number 3 with 14.4% of the POV. So about half of what Perrin got, but still pretty significant.
Then I would go Egwene.
Egwene is correct at number 4.
At the door.
9.2%.
Then Matt.
Matt, correct, 7.3%.
Yes, I am killing it this book. This is it. This is the last time we're playing this game ever, so I can feel good about myself.
It will get worse. Oh my god, 20 is not even close to as bad as this game.
I know. My jaw almost fell off my face when you said 20, because I had been thinking about this earlier today when I was hanging out around the house. I was doing some maintenance on our front steps, and I'm like, okay, I know he's gonna ask the question. And I think I thought through, like, I was like, oh, well, he thinks I forget Suan has some POV. That'll be, and the Tanchico lady has some. Those will be like 7 and 8, not 19 and 20 potentially. So, all right. So let me just run through it again. Perrin, Rand, Elaine, Egwene, Nynaeve.
Nynaeve has not shown up yet. Matt was 5, and that is where we are at.
Matt is 5. So Nynaeve is in the mix, I would say, at this stage, and Moraine got some early on. But now we're getting low enough. I'm starting to think of like a Min, right? Because Min got some in the mix. And I feel like Tom got some somewhere along the line. Um,
You are saying all the names. I just need a number 6,
yeah,
good
these are
sir.
names of characters. Let's go Nynaeve.
Nynaeve is number 7, not 6. She clocks in with
Ah,
3.8% of the POV.
only 3.8 is actually pretty shocking
Yeah,
to me.
it is. It's
So
pretty
ahead
crazy.
of her, I'll put Moraine.
Moraine is
I
number
don't feel good
8
about
with
it.
1.5%.
Ooh. So wait, who have I missed in my mix of characters? Min.
Min is correct. Min is
Yeah.
5.9%. She both had a pretty significant chunk of chapter 1, and the overthrowing of the tower chapter is all from Min's POV. So just to recap, 1
Okay.
Perrin, 2 Rand, 3 Elaine, 4 Egwene, 5 Matt, 6 Min, 7 Nynaeve, 8 Moraine. We are now looking for 9.
11 more. We're not even halfway.
Yep.
Um,
You can throw in the towel whenever you run out of names, but we're not quite there yet.
I don't think Lan got any. Um, as I said, I do remember we got some Suon, the Amerlin seat, and the Tanchico Forsaken lady, whose name I'm forgetting, but it was kind of mysterious that it was her in those moments. I don't think we got Bail Doman any
There is no
POV.
bail.
Tom? Is there some Tom somewhere around here?
Tom is number 10, not 9, but it is worth noting the difference between 10 and 9 is a fraction of a percentage. I am willing to give you this. They are both 1.5%. Tom is tied for 9th.
Hmm. And we already covered Matt. Matt's already on the
Yep.
board.
Mm-hmm.
So
We are now at the
ooh.
point where I'm going to say start thinking about villains because they always show up in little snippets here and there, and start thinking
Yeah.
about other like side characters who got POV.
Well, I know we never got Loyal because I was bummed out.
It's the worst.
We did get some from the perspective of Patton Fane / whatever he's known as now, but that felt like it was only a couple paragraphs at the end of maybe 2 chapters total.
Yep.
So I think we're still a little bit above that. I'll go with Mystery Tanchico lady. What's her name?
Are you thinking
The one who sees the ship arrive with the topless ladies on it.
that is actually, you are thinking of a mystery Tanchico lady who it turns out we met and had quite a bit of interaction with later on in the book. That mystery Tanchico lady was Aiel, the Shanshan who eventually befriended Nynaeve and Elaine. And guess what? You nailed it. That mystery Tanchico lady comes in at number 9 with 1.5%. Aiel, for those of you keeping score. That is now our
Tom.
Yep, that is now our top 10. And at this point, I am willing to accept names without positions because, boy, is it going to be difficult anyways.
So Patton Fane is in there.
Yes, he was at number 18.3% of the book.
There is the Forsaken lady who controlled Nynaeve and Elaine so harshly. We needed her control scene.
Did not come from her perspective. That was actually from Elaine's POV.
Oh. I keep struggling with Aiel because I don't remember Aiel
Not a single one on the list.
Yeah, interesting. Is there some Lanfear?
There is no Lanfear.
Ah.
No, that's not true. It is true there's no Lanfear. What I was about to say is not true.
I think I'm cooked. I think you got to do the bottom 10.
Number 11, Dane Bornhald, everyone's favorite White Cloak. Number 12, Jaikim Carradine, everyone's least favorite White Cloak. Number 13, you said it, I'll give you credit for it, Suan Sancha. Number 14, Surath, the Shanshan who was running things on the island. She showed up in chapter 1. Number 15, Leandrin gets a brief POV at the end of the Nynaeve Elaine plotline. Number 16, Elida gets some POV at the beginning of the book, plotting her takeover of the White Tower. Number 17, Aiel gets a little POV early in the book when she's talking about what is going on with Berelain. Number 18, you got Padden Fane. Number 19 is Sarah Covenry, the girl who got suspended in a previous book and is murdered by a dark friend at the beginning of this book with absolutely no context. And at number 20, only making up 0.03% of the book, is an unnamed beggar whose arm gets broken in Tanchico.
Woof. I'm gonna give myself a solid B plus on that.
Yeah, no, that was good work.
I got 50%, which is not a B plus. Sorry, students who have tried to convince me of that in the past. But it did feel like I got the percentage wise, I got pretty far, right? Good.
Oh,
Probably got
absolutely.
80% of the book.
80, 90, maybe even 95. We are everything that was 11 or higher is 1% or less of the book, each character.
Nice.
So
Fun. And shows just to reiterate my point that this got much more expansive. That
Oh, yeah.
demonstrates it, right? And so many of those names you listed towards the end, there were a couple that we won't see again, but there are a lot that feel like they are deep teases that you
Yeah.
have to remember moving forward. Also, in my personal life, I barely remember June at this point. So the fact that most of what I forgot was February, I'm taking the pass.
Oh, 100%. If you just remember the prologues, that makes this game a lot easier. But who remembers the prologues by the end of a Wheel of Time book?
Nobody.
The next segment I have is our segment that will continue to get longer and longer every book until eventually, hopefully, it gets shorter. This is our review of all of the unfulfilled prophecies that we have remaining. What I would like to do is, as we've done in the past, just run through a series of things that we've seen that are prophesied, and I would like your thoughts either on if any of your thoughts on these prophecies has changed because of the most recent book, or if you think any of these prophecies has been fulfilled in the most recent book, right? This is just kind of our check-in.
where are we with prophecies? First, from the first book, Min had
Sorry, that long pause. That long pause, I was like, "Oh no, he just asked me a question and I didn't hear it." Like, what happened? What just happened? Like, took me right back to the classroom where, like, oh no, I was daydreaming or something. But you were just pausing before you launched into some thoughts I derailed.
That was me looking for a pen in the middle of a pause and hoping that it wasn't too long. It was. First off, let's talk about Min's visions from the Eye of the World. She sees visions of Tom, a man juggling fire that is not him, and the White Tower. Nothing there, I don't think. Perrin, a broken crown and a field of trees flowering. Matt, the red eagle, an eye on a scale, and a laughing face. Let's stop there. Anything here that immediately comes to mind?
An eye on a scale, a red eagle, but those are matte because
Right.
the man. No, it's a red wolf's head on the Manetheren flag.
So be careful here. This is exactly the right thoughts. Let's make sure we get them straight as we're thinking about this. The red wolf's head is Perrin's personal flag. The red eagle is the flag of Manetheren. Both of them are now flying above the two rivers. So I think you're exactly right to go red eagle. That I recognize, but why is it Matt instead of Perrin? That's, I think, one of the two that I would immediately circle. That strikes me as odd. If you are a longtime book reader, you know what the Broken Crown is. That makes sense after this book, but if you're not, it doesn't. Any last thoughts on those?
I'd like to explain the Broken Crown. No, I'm just
go
kidding. I
ahead.
have no idea.
I will then give you just a pile of Rand prophecies, and you can tell me if any of them make sense to you after this last book. Although one of them I think I already revealed. I think it does make sense. A crown of laurels, a beggar's staff, Rand pouring water on sand, a bloody handprint, hot irons, 3 women standing over his funeral pyre, and black rock that has his blood on it and is wet with the blood.
Hmm. Um, pouring water on sand is extremely abstracted, but we now understand that Ruidion is coming back to life. So it feels
Yeah.
potentially like that's connected.
Yeah, I think both the idea of Rand revealing the Aiel past and then immediately making it rain, and as you said, Rand kind of revitalizing Roydion and creating a lake there in a place where there's basically no water anywhere. I think both of those feel like very, as you said, abstract but reasonable interpretations of that prophecy. I'm not willing to completely cross it off and say let's not revisit it and see if there's a better kind of version of the prophecy later on. But if nowhere else in the series do we see anything that resembles that, I feel pretty comfortable saying that came true. It wasn't a forgotten prophecy. I've got
Accepted.
nothing. I've got nothing else on Rand here. Uh, that is all of our unresolved prophecies from book one. In The Great Hunt, we also got some Min viewings. Elaine, it turns out, will be queen. Egwene, the white flame was seen. And Galad, we were told, won't notice who he hurts. Elaine, we saw a hot iron and an axe. I don't really see anything notable there. Any thoughts on those before I jump to the next stuff?
Wait, so Rand and Elaine have hot irons, not fulfilled, but both
Yes,
are have that in their future, it would
correct.
seem. Some kind of weird queenly, kingly bedroom activity. I mean, stop trying to make Galad a thing.
Yep.
But the fact that he say his again.
Uh, Galad's is that he won't notice who he hurts.
I think there could be a little of that here. I mean, that sounds vague enough as a prophecy that that is just going to be true for his lifetime. But
Yeah.
it seems like in the conflict of the falling of the tower, he
Yeah.
hurt people and didn't realize the what his motivation should have been,
Yeah,
essentially.
I think that's definitely a good point, right? It's not direct enough that we say that's it, but it definitely feels like exactly the thing we're describing here. This is either that or another similar event will come that triggers that prophecy. Absolutely. Uh, this next one I only wrote down part of, but I think I can do it from memory. So let's see how this goes. Twice and twice he shall be marked, twice to live and twice to die. Once the heron to set his path, twice the heron to name him true. Once the dragon for remembrance lost, twice the dragon for the price he must pay. I'm pretty sure the first half of that prophecy we had before, but now once the dragon for remembrance lost makes a lot more sense than it did before, and twice the dragon for the price he must pay also at least is partially resolved. He has the dragon, even though we're not entirely clear on what the price will be.
Sounds right to me.
Excellent. The other prophecy we had in that book, twice dawns the day when his blood is shed, once for mourning, once for birth. Don't think that has happened, but it's a cool phrase, so I get to say it every book until it comes true. Let's talk about some prophecies from The Dragon Reborn. Heron. One of the images around him was a Tuatha with a sword. Another was a falcon and a hawk. Both of these may not be fully fulfilled, but we definitely have a much better understanding of them. The Tuatha with a sword would seem to be Aram, and the falcon is Aiel, now is married to him, although we still haven't had much interaction with a hawk. What are your thoughts on seeing one of these pretty solidly fulfilled and the other at least halfway?
Well, I just want to say the other piece of that with the hawk. We were just talking about the hawk as the symbol on the flag of Manetheren, so
Mm,
that bodes now. I agree that we can't mark it fulfilled, but is he going to have to choose between Fael? Is he married to his land or married to his lady? Right,
yeah.
that seems like a potential future conflict to come. And Manetheren also used to have a king and doesn't. So is he gonna have to reclaim that kingdom?
Yeah.
Maybe by reclaiming a broken crown. Yeah, I did get there. I found it. I found it.
Boom, putting together a hypothetical story. Love it. We had learned in The Dragon Reborn of an Aiel prophecy that had been passed down through the generations that when the stone falls, the Aiel will leave the waste and they will be changed by finding what was lost. We still don't know how they are going to be changed, but they definitely found what was lost at the end of this book.
Yes, fulfilled.
Let's talk about Egwene's dreams in that book, because boy, did she have a lot of them. White cloaks branding her father's hands. Rand kneeling in a dry chamber while dragons settle onto the skin of his arms. Rand confronting the Shan-Chan. A hawk fastening a collar on Perrin's neck. And Perrin with a beard leading a pack of wolves. So that is half of the dreams, but let's do the Perrin and Rand cluster. What are your thoughts on these? Any that you feel like are definitely fulfilled? Any of them that you feel like are still in progress?
I haven't been tracking Perrin's facial hair. Does he
does
have
have
a
a
beard
beard
at this point?
Yes. Fael
right.
comments
So-
on it. He finally needs to trim it after she loved him growing it for so long.
That's great. So that seems pretty good. Again, we have the hawk, right? So
Yes.
right, you just said hawk.
Yep.
So that could fit in with that hypothetical plot line I was just building.
I will also note a
and
hawk
then-
fastening a collar harkens back to the sad bracelets that we had in another plotline in this book.
Hmm. And then I would say for the Rand, the dragons getting marked, check.
Yeah.
Right. Like it seems good. Her father getting branded, I don't recall literally being true.
That's correct. I don't think this is literal. The question I would have is has this been fulfilled metaphorically when her father was No, her father wasn't one of the ones who was captured. When her father was, put under the question by the white cloaks. I think that's open for debate, but certainly if this was just a warning of the white cloaks in the two rivers, we've got that.
And I don't remember anything else from your list.
Rand hasn't confronted the Shan-Chan, so I think we're set. Egwene saw a vision of Matt and the Shan-Chan. She saw a vision of Matt putting an eye on a scale. She saw a vision of Matt hanging from a tree. She saw a vision of Perrin jumping from a cliff, saying, "I must learn to fly by the bottom." She sees Min springing a trap. She sees the white cloaks ravaging the two rivers, and she sees the white cloaks putting Master Luhan in a trap. I am just going to immediately say the white cloaks ravaging the two rivers and the white cloaks putting Master Luhan in a trap. Just check and check. Those happened literally. But we've got a couple of interesting other notes here. Any of those stand out to you?
I mean, you could say Perrin's move towards leadership is him jumping off a cliff and trying to learn to fly on the way down. I mean, again, that's pretty abstracted, but that's a metaphor people actually use, like flying by the seat of your pants, essentially. And then interesting, I did not remember all these ones about Matt and the eye on the scale, which we've seen twice now.
Yep.
It makes me think he's going to get an eye patch soon. I don't know why, but like that just seems like he's gonna lose an eye, but we'll have to see.
I will also point out Matt hanging from a tree is a thing that literally happened in this book after he was expelled from the Aelfin. So that is definitely prophecy fulfilled. And the other I note is Min springing a trap. She didn't do so literally, but Min inadvertently was the one who caused the coup of Elida overthrowing Suan. So it's possible that that was metaphorical for Min kind of stepping in that situation and causing it to explode.
Sounds good.
And now, prophecies that took place in this book that may or may not have been fulfilled. Min has some viewings in this book of injury and death at the White Tower from many people on the same day, of Siwan naked and screaming, of Galad at Egwene's feet. I'm sorry, Egwene at Galad's. There, I need to say words. Egwene at Gawain's feet, and Gawain is either bowing to her or breaking her neck, and something that happened soon would change it. And then Logain with a halo of glory to come.
I think the first couple we saw, right? The fall of the White Tower,
Yeah.
the coup, that's a lot of death on the same day. That's Suan screaming. But Egwene and Gawain potentially either him bowing to her or breaking her neck, and Logain having glory to come both feel like really interesting things. Any thoughts on those prophecies or how they might play out?
I think I put those in the deep tease category. Like it's gonna come. I think again we've made sure that Logain stays on the board. So
Yeah.
interesting to know that there's still something to come for him.
It's probably the same thing with the next prophecy I have. This is one that is just a tease for later. The Karakarn is the only way that the Aiel will survive the last battle, and he will only save a remnant of the Aiel. Then we've got some Egwene dreams. Rand in chains, Rand building a wall and keeping Min as well as others out, Aiel battling and then throwing aside their weapons, Matt wrestling a Shan woman who is tied to him in some way, and a wolf fighting a man with a changing face. Any thoughts here?
Wolf fighting a man with a changing face seems like check. Like Perrin has been fighting a man who,
Yeah.
seems to shift his identities. Um, Rand building a wall to keep out Min
Yes.
felt like that feels metaphorical. Like as he starts his training, he's going to find a way to kind of mentally block people or
Mhm.
some such, like keep himself away. It's kind of felt like that to me.
Yeah.
And that's what I got.
The only other one I'll point out is we did have a vision of the Aiel battling and then throwing aside their weapons. And this isn't quite what happened at the end of this book, but the story of the Aiel kind of being broken by Rand's revelation, we should keep an eye on whether that might in some way relate to this, right? Because the Aiel stopped fighting abruptly upon learning that information, but certainly not enough to call it fulfilled. Last one. I know this is the dreams and prophecy section. Greg hates it so much. Perrin had some dreams in this book. Egwene in a crowd of women, all of them kneeling to her, including Elaine and Nynaeve, and Rand in rags with a bandage covering his eyes.
I think we've said before, sometimes feels like we're building towards Egwene becoming the new Amerlin seat,
Yeah.
and that vision kind of would connect to that. That was Rand getting
Yes.
blinded or with a bandage around his eyes. Um, so maybe it is that Matt has to take his eye and put it on a scale. I don't know,
Mm.
something there.
This is now when I can say that's a lot of dangling threads, and there's nothing
Yeah.
else I can say about them. So we are now in the final point of my overview, and that is wild predictions from Greg. I cannot participate in the what comes next section because I don't want to tell you what comes next. But I am very curious, Greg, where do you think we go from here? Because as you said, this feels like a book that really breaks the mold, and I think that leaves us really open in terms of where we go next. What are you anticipating in the Fires of Heaven?
That just sounded like I'm dying. I mean,
It
Fires of
did.
Heaven doesn't quite work it that way. Like, what are you expecting, Greg? Yeah, I'm unwell, and this is how Tyler chooses to tell everybody. So I mean, it's much harder to predict at this point. I think I see Elaine, Nynaeve, and kind of the team they've assembled continuing to kind of do the work of countering the Black Aja. And
Okay.
I can't get much more specific than this. I know they chose one of two quests at the beginning of this book. It seems likely they might turn toward the other one
Yeah.
for the next book. And then over on the Rand plot line, I think I predicted last episode, I think we've got some Aiel civil war. I kind
Yeah.
of think we'll spend a book getting in order over there, and I assume that will keep all those characters quote over there. And then after the next book, they'll come back into the wetland and
Yeah.
start to reintegrate into the main kind of flow of the continent.
All of us who have read the book take a moment to go, and then let's talk about what
Yeah.
we're doing next week. We are not going to take a break.
Well,
Oh, go ahead, please.
wait. Perrin. I didn't talk about Perrin.
Oh,
So
yes.
Perrin and Fael, I think they have to go visit Dad next book. This was just too heavily hinted at. So I think we're gonna go uh what did Meet the Parents? No, there's an older movie. Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, right?
I,
Isn't
I
that
almost
like
just
let's go.
broke our explicit rating by giving you the sequel to Meet the Parents.
So I do think it's something like that. I think it'd be fun to take this character who's kind of risen up to mythic status of local folk hero and then kind of busting him down to bumbling son-in-law, because he is in law now at this point.
Yep.
So I suspect something like that. I also think that in terms of Perrin, the biggest threat is the White Cloaks running off to the Queen, and also Padan Fane was
Yep.
going off to the Queen. But I think that's again going to be a book or two away, is my guess. So what are we doing next? Well, as I said at the top of the episode, we are continuing on next week. I'm going to go continue on in a half hour upstairs with the Fires of Heaven because we're not recording for a while, but I haven't gotten to read Wheel of Time in a while, so that will be fun.
Just a note,
And
we are only
listeners,
reading the
yeah.
prologue of the Fires of Heaven for our first week. So not prologue in
So an
one,
easy
just one
start.
chapter.
Spend the extra time staring at the map for a while, and then move into the prologue. And then, as teased at the top of the episode, listeners should be preparing for the television episodes. And again, if you skipped our television episodes last summer, feel free to skip them again, but it might be a good opportunity to go check out this show. On my movie podcast, which I will counterplug if you enjoy my ramblings here, but want to hear them about movies, I co-host a podcast called The Long Take Review, and we've been doing some what we call Oscar Fairy, where we go back in time to an Oscars, and we're each given points, and we get to change who was nominated and who won certain awards within the limits of our budget. And I will say, Rosamund Pike came up a lot during the Gone Girl year, and
she should have.
she's kind of floating. She's floating all around, and every time she comes up, I'm like, my co-hosts are like, "Oh yeah, remember Rosamund Pike? Like, what happened to her?" I'm like, "Guys, I live with her all the time in my head. Like, I have not left Rosamund Pike land." Because in typical fashion, that's who I picture now when we read Moraine chapters. So if you have not been thinking enough about Rosamund Pike, this is a great way to do so. Also, Saltburn, which I thought was awesome, and
Was
I'm mad
real
my
good.
colleagues on that show forgot about Saltburn because she was so delicious in that. But now I'm just rambling. So instead of doing that, I will say thank you to you, our listeners, for another season of this podcast. We'll call it a success for us. If you want to toss your comments with your rankings of the book so far, look for a social media post celebrating this episode. And we'd love to see kind of what your rankings are. If you want to make some wild predictions, they'd be welcome there as well. And we look forward to continuing that journey. I will then close by saying thank you to Tylor, who shepherds me through this experience and is our guide. If it's not clear from these episodes, he does way more work than I do, both in obvious ways by preparing summaries and questions in the flow of the episodes, but also in not obvious ways like editing out when I burp sometimes, and also posting all of them on the internet. We will continue to post in our regular feeds, and you can expect the new episode next week. If you are one of those young people who's out there and interested, we're now on YouTube as well. So you can jump on YouTube to listen to us, which wasn't true at the start of this season, but is true now. This is becoming a more important space so you can for podcasts, so you can subscribe. It is just the audio. It's not video of the two of us, unless the people demand it. And the last reminder for this is we did celebrate the current season by launching a t-shirt. So you can find a link to the TeePublic store in the show notes, or by searching for Gonk Squadron, which is our friend Ben, who's been a guest and will be a guest on the next set of television episodes. And any proceeds we would receive from the sale of that t-shirt, which is our show logo. And I say t-shirt, but it's TeePublic, so you can slap it on any old thing. They'll put it on a mug. They'll put it on a notebook. They'll put it on a tapestry. They'll put it on a pillowcase. But any of our proceeds actually go through Ben to help support foster children here in Massachusetts, where Tyler and I both live. Tyler, I just rambled a whole lot, so you can say whatever you want, but then you have to say the name of the podcast.
I think I can handle that. Greg, thank you for coming along on this journey with me. I'm very excited that I can introduce you to one of my favorite book series and that you seem to not hate it. And if you do hate it, you're pretty good at lying, and I'm okay with that. Thank you to all of you who listen to our show. And I'm not going to repeat what Greg said. Y'all are awesome. And we'll see you next week through the glass columns.